Hey there, Tim with Jet City Music, here to talk about how to use mutes to make your bass lines a little bit more funkier. This is a style that's commonly referred to as finger funk. And basically what you're doing when you're using this style is you're taking a bass line that would normally use short notes to create a funk style or funk sound. And you're using a series of mutes with this hand to tighten it up a little bit and just to make it groove a little bit more with the drummer, or in particular the drummer's hi-hat, which will be playing the eighth note rhythm along with you. Now this technique requires that you get good at just alternating between these two fingers while changing strings. Because what you're going to be doing is, when you're playing your bass line, you'll start out with just a series of muted eighth notes, and then you will hold your hand over the strings kind of like this, where everything's muted, and then anytime you need a note, what you'll do is you'll just push the string down so that your default hand position becomes essentially muting all of your strings. So that no matter which string you play, you're going to get that sound. Once you get that going, you can practice this right by just pressing whenever you want to know. And you'll notice that my default hand position is right here. Now it seems relatively simple in theory, but it actually takes a lot of practice in terms of your rhythm. So one of the best ways to start practicing this is actually to practice breaking it up into groups of four picks, so that you can gauge where the beats are. Now a really good way to get into this is by just simply starting by maybe tapping your foot or using a metronome and trying to fit 4 picks in between each foot tap, or it's like 16th notes, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a... Now if that's too fast, you can take it even slower. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and gradually speed that up. Notice I'm muting everything right now. This is really just an exercise in the rhythm. Once you start feeling comfortable with that, try to put a note with your foot. Maybe change the note around. Then you work on putting a note, maybe 2 notes. Notice I'm still picking just that, even down here. Now once you start getting comfortable putting a note on 1 and feeling that in groups of 4, what you can do is you can start counting your 1E and a 2E andas along with that, and practice putting notes on different parts of that 1E and a 2E and a grouping, or the 16th note grouping. So let's say we wanted to put a note on the E, or the 1E and a 2E and a. In that count, we would actually need to count that a little bit. 1E and a 2E and a, and just practice squeezing that note. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. You can then move that to the and. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Still picking all of the 16th notes. Then you can move to the and. 1E and a 2E and a, or to the a. 1E and a 2E and a. Once you become familiar with all the different parts of the beat, all 4 little parts of the beat, you can start mixing them up and creating little patterns for yourself. Maybe something like this. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and something like that. Sort of, right? And you can start building bass lines rhythmically where you know they're accurate because you're marking each 16th note as you go. and you're lining up, as opposed to something, right, where you're a little bit more reliant on your counting in your head. Da, 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 da. When you add that mute in there, right, it just gives it that extra little thing that makes it groove a little bit harder. It also keeps you a lot better in time. This technique has been used a lot by a lot of bass players in the past. A couple notable bass players would be Rocco Prestia from Tower of Power. He used this a lot. A good recording for that is the song "What Is Hip." You can hear that happening all the time, all over that song. Also, Jaco Pastorius, very similar name. He used this technique on a very famous tune of his called "Come On, Come Over," and that is one of the best examples of this technique being used. The song I was playing at the beginning, or the groove I was playing at the beginning, and the groove I'm going to play now, using this technique, is an old James Brown classic called "The Chicken," played in this style as Jaco Pastorius would have played it on some famous recordings. It's so you'll notice I'm just keeping that going the whole time. Right? Taking a bass line which was giving it a little bit more momentum.